Hello, my marvellous sausages! Destiny 2 versus Warframe? Oh, go on then, let's have a chat. Now, the reason I've started playing Warframe is basically because Destiny 2 is so thin on the ground, there's hardly anything interesting to make about it, and it's far too depressing. Plus, I do enjoy looter shooters, and I enjoy constantly online games, so Warframe was a natural place for me to go and stick my nose in and have a look. Now, I've played Destiny for, well, 10 years, and I've played Warframe for about, well, 4 weeks at the moment. So my impressions for Warframe are not as in-depth as, of course, Destiny 2 is, because I've made over well over 1,000 videos on Destiny 2, and I am starting to do stuff with Warframe as well. But there's certain things that keep on coming up when I'm talking to people in chat and in comments and things like that, and I do tend to think that these then are the main sticking points for why people maybe not be going to Warframe, or why they're sticking with Destiny, or why they'll never go to Warframe, and I completely understand that too. Third person versus first person. This is quite a big deal for a lot of people, and I can understand it as well. It doesn't really bother me, to be perfectly honest. I quite like the third person because it changes the very nature of the game, and it removes you from the action to a certain degree, and I think it also gives you a slight emotional distance from it as well, because you can't get that up close and personal with the enemies. Like in Destiny 2, where you have a thrall, explodey thrall type chap jump up into your face, or a scream or something like that. You're more into the action, but I think by being closer into the action, it makes the action more intricate to a certain degree. However, the third person of Warframe is really loads of rollicking fun as well, because you can see your character doing the really cool stuff. The only time you can see a character doing stuff in Destiny 2 is if you do an emote or something like that. There's no chance for you to pull out, or if you're using a sword. So you think about it, some of Destiny 2 is third person. This wasn't something that really bothered me, but it did seem to be something that did bother a lot of people, and reasons why they didn't particularly want to go over, and I completely understand that, yes. Now, the story of Warframe and Destiny 2, well, they're both difficult to get into, let's be honest. Imagine being a new player for Destiny 2. It's a really difficult thing to get into, because it seems pretty impenetrable. You've got this kind of task, or opening quest, which kind of shows you the basics of movement and of attack, but there's nothing really story-based into it to drag you into the universe. It just kind of says, do this, do that, go here, go there, right, off you go, and lets you go. And because they've removed the Red War, and because they've basically removed practically all of Forsaken, the first thing that you run into is Shadowkeep, which is generally considered to be one of the weakest, if not the weakest, of the stories in Destiny 2. So it's not a great introduction. But on the other hand, it doesn't really tell you to do Shadowkeep first either. It kind of lets you just dive into various different things. All it does is kind of lock you out of activities due to the power level. So the opening salvo from Destiny 2 isn't particularly great. Now, looking at Warframe, I've got to be honest with you, it ain't that much better when it comes to starting out. I started playing it last year, and I played it for about 3 or 4 streams, and I played it a bit off stream as well, and then I just bounced off it completely. It didn't drag me in because it seemed to be too bitty, too unrelated, and aimless was a term that has come up, and I can kind of feel that as well. But what Warframe does is it gives you arcs, which are basically stories that you need to follow. Now, once I decided to do that, I started to really get a grips with it, but it wasn't until I started playing, I think it was the second Dream. I won't give any story spoilers or anything like that. It made me really interested then. I'm still not quite hooked yet, but I found it very, very interesting. And particularly when in chat people said, well done, you've now finished the tutorial, and I've been playing for about 20 hours or 30 hours. I thought, oh, that's really cool, and I really did like that. Now, granted, in Warframe, if you want to follow the roadmap, you do have to go to the website, and it says, play this first, and that first, and it splits it up into arcs. But there's a structure there. And when you go to the terminal on your orbiter, it does show you all these different activities, or stories, or quests, rather, that you need to follow, and show you the prerequisites that you need to do to unlock them. So there's a path there. And once I followed that path, and then I met and finished with the second Dream, which is only halfway through the second arc, 4 of which... of which there are 4, then I thought, right, I know exactly what I'm going to be doing now, and I'm going to be carrying on playing it. So that is generally, I think, a better experience than Destiny 2. But then this kind of leads me on to a really massive topic, because content is king. And the more content you have in these kinds of games, I think the happier people are. Now, in Destiny 2, of course, we had the content vaulting, which, let's face it, was utterly depressing thing to behold. Beyond Light came along, and then Destiny removed an absolute shed load of stuff from the game. We went from a really cluttered director to a very empty director, and it just seemed like the game was just a shadow of its former self. It was actually quite depressing, but not only from that standpoint is it depressing, but from the standpoint of the fact that people bought these DLCs. So you buy a DLC, or you buy any game, you expect to be able to play it whenever. This is definitely a product of things going from physical media to digital media as well, but that's a completely different story. But they physically took stuff away, and we couldn't play it. Now, whether or not this was for technicalities or for technical reasons is completely irrelevant, isn't it, really? Because as a player, you think, well, I can't play that stuff anymore. And whether or not you go, yes, no, I understand, technically, yes, I agree with that, that's fine to do that. Deep down, you've gone, I can't play that anymore, and that's very irritating, and it would have left a sour taste in your mouth. It did with me, and as time has gone on, and the game has gotten a bit more ropey, and you think to yourself, my God, if they'd had all this stuff still in the game, we wouldn't be having these feelings of not much to do. Do you know what I mean? Because there would be so much more to play in just the standard core gameplay. There would be loads more strikes. There would be more Gambit maps. There would be more Crucible maps. There would be more raids. Now, I know they do bring things back from time to time, but I don't think it's enough. And I don't think it's assuaging the Destiny community at all. Warframe, on the other hand, has got everything in it, apparently, that it had at the start. And everything they put in it still remains, which is a fantastic philosophy from Digital Extremes. And they do seem to have the community's ear, really, as well. Whereas Bungie have kind of totally dropped the ball in that regard. There's loads of problems that have come up with Destiny 2, but a lot of the problems, though, have seemed to have come from Bungie themselves. Do you know what I mean? There's been huge dramas with Bungie. I've had all the people losing their jobs, all those people fired, which is utterly terrible. There's been the buyout by Sony. There's been the accusations of not listening to the community, I suppose. Well, that's, you know, that's... I think they do sometimes, and I think they don't, but I think that's just totally normal. And not to mention some of the culture there, which has led to some unsavory stories coming out as well. So it's been soured quite a bit. And the upshot of all of this, whether or not you agree with anything or not, or you're defending them, or you dislike them, whatever, what's happened is it's driven a wedge between Destiny 2 and its community. So it's going to take so much for Bungie to be able to repair that lack of trust, really, or to get that trust back. Whereas with Warframe, I've only been playing it, like I say, for a few days, but I haven't heard that many dramas coming out of Digital Extremes. And they really want to seem to not cheese off their community, which is a really good idea. And I'm not having a go at all at the actual people who do the work in D2 in Bungie, you know, the people on the ground. It's the decisions that are made at the top and the course that it has been charting, which has caused a lot of problem and is causing loads of people to be pushed away. But not only that, something that brought me back to Warframe was 1999, and I thought, great, I can't wait to play this. But of course, I can't play it because I haven't unlocked all the original story quests, or all the missions, or completed them. And I was a little bit gutted because I wanted to jump in, but it's a good thing that they're making me play all the old game stuff, because I'm learning the characters, I'm making my own mistakes as I'm going and learning from them. And 1999 just looks so cool. It looks like they're constantly kind of innovating and changing the game and making it so much different. I mean, they've time traveling back to 1999 were an amazing idea. Now, Destiny 2's story has been grand, and it's like basically been a space opera. It's been expansive. There's been some amazing beats in it, some brilliant characters. There's been some misses as well, like Lightfall, but I think that's another video in its entirety there. But in general, the story has been great, and everybody did like the resolution with the final shape. I did as well, but what was happening there was that I was feeling that the game was going to be on its way out that year. And I don't know, maybe I wasn't as invested as I thought I was going to be. But I was just shocked. I was shocked, right, at when the final shape finished, and then everything just nosedived. It went all off a cliff. Because they've been trumpeting it as the end of a 10-year saga, I really do think a lot of people went, okay, I finished, that's great, I really enjoyed it, bang, on to something else. They actually set up an expiry date for their game. And it's been great in the meantime going towards this particular goal. I particularly loved Season of the Arrivals. That always sticks in my mind because we got the imminence of the pyramid ships arriving and all these things just hovering ominously over. And I even loved it when you could see the darkness creeping over the director when Beyond Shape Beyond Shape? Beyond, what's it called? Beyond Light, that's it, just arrived. But I didn't really realise at the time, it was just taking so much away as well. But anyway, the story in D2 really did work right up until the point of the final shape, and then it just completely fell off a cliff. It seems that they didn't have an idea for this intervening year, or actually started making the content for this intervening year, because we've ended up with episodes which are poorly received, to be kind. And they're, personally, I dislike them intensely. I dislike the cadence of the stuff being released. However, I've got to be fair, that's because I'm a content creator, and the weekly thing is a good thing for me because I can release things weekly. But I can understand for players why it's much better to have nothing time-gated and for everything to drop straight away. So I can see that, but for me, I hated it. But the stories weren't particularly interesting. I mean, you know, just I can't remember what happened at the end of Echoes. She just fell in the river and floated off. And Revenant, Fickrule, went, and then he died. Like, we injected him with something, and then Eramis was redeemed and went away, and what's his name, Mithrax, was spent the entire time sort of with something stuck in his head in the lab, and went for the whole thing, and then at the end he went, oh, I'm better now. So it all just seems very odd and lacking in impact and lacking in drama. So, I think that the Destiny 2 story has been fantastic right up until the final shape, and now it's on really, really shaky ground. So it's not really compelling me to go and play it. I like to play it for the story. That's what I enjoy. I don't particularly like these activities where it's just go into an arena and do this and do that and do this and do that and have loads of rewards at the end. The game has now become that completely, almost. You know, with strikes, you felt there was like little mini stories to them, and you didn't mind running them again, particularly if they had their own loot pools and then their own specific rewards, which were difficult to get. That was a really good thing, but I find these arena activities, even though they're different, they're all very repetitive, and it just logically is a weird thing. Why would some sort of massive enemy say, right then, instead of having a war and fighting you and it being a story, let's just go and do these repetitive things in an arena, and then once you've done that, we'll bugger off. It's just bizarre. It doesn't make much sense to me. I know it's a computer game, a video game, but still, it loses me in that kind of gameplay loop, which is even worse, I think, in episodes than it was in the seasonal activity 2. At the moment, I'm really enjoying the Warframe gameplay loop because all I'm doing is just all the story stuff, and there's so much of it. And I do enjoy the mission types as well. It is different because each of the nodes has a particular mission type, so you kind of find that there's certain mission types that you prefer to do. But it's just the same in Destiny. You either choose to do a strike, or you choose to do a battleground, or you choose to do gambit, or you choose to do a seasonal activity. But Warframe's mission types are interesting, and they do tend to weave some of the narrative into that. And then they've got their own missions too, which are fundamental to completing particular parts of the DLC. So I do like that. But the most important thing, of course, about these games, it depends really. I mean, story is very important to me, and character and all that. But the grind itself, is it enjoyable? Or does it feel artificially swollen up by, well, stupid things that you just find incredibly irritating? Because Destiny 2 has been doing that a lot more lately. I'm not fond of these new modifiers that you've got dropping with the explodey bloody ammo bricks, or losing health if you stand still or you got to keep running around. It just seems like really cheesy ways to keep you replaying stuff, or to try and make the same stuff more interesting instead of giving us new stuff. So I don't like that at all with Destiny. Warframe, I don't seem to see much in the way of modifiers as yet. It's just a difficulty being ramped up, you know? And I haven't really run into a brick wall with difficulty yet either. But with Destiny, the grind, for me, was all about the weapons. And also, I do like ornaments, and I do also like the drip. That is a really, really nice aspect of Destiny 2 that I've always enjoyed. But as time has gotten on, I don't know if it's weapon crafting that has done this, but I'm not as excited about weapons anymore as I used to be. It is quite nice to hunt for a god roll, but of course we all realised with Weightgate that it was weighted against us, so it seemed to artificially swell the people's playtime, or the people, their playtime, by making them play longer, because there was less chance of them getting the roll that they wanted, which does suck and does feel underhand. Bungie have said that they didn't mean this, it's not intentional, and, you know, I give them the benefit of the doubt there, really, but it did swell the playtime, didn't it, at the end of the day, which kept people on for longer. But I've kind of lost the oomph to go and search for weapons. This could be to do with fatigue of the franchise in general for me, because I've been playing it for so long. But, you know, I'm not really hooked on that. Whereas in Warframe, it's not the weapons that I'm remotely interested in, it's the frames themselves, the Warframes, because isn't there over 50 of them now? And they're all very different. Well, I haven't got 50. All they seem to be very different. When I'm playing with other people, and then all these really bizarre magical things start happening with, like, barbed wire chains around the place, or it's just crazy, or ghosts flying around the place, or plants growing through the floor. Just seems so varied and different. And not only that, once you do have a Warframe, it's not locked into just being that Warframe. You can tweak it with the vast array of mods that you've got. Same goes for the weapons. I'm still having a bit of trouble understanding the mastery ranks and why I'm upgrading the suits and the weapons to level 30 and then they can't go any further. That's a bit weird for me to get my head around, but I'm sure I'll start to understand it the more I play. Destiny 2, well, I love build crafting in Destiny 2. It's great. I've never been particularly good at it, but I like it when I see some clever person's build and I stick it on and it works. That's great. When you go from being completely rubbish at something to being really good at something because of the build that you've got. But also, in all fairness to Destiny, they have innovated in it quite a lot. I think Prismatic's fantastic. I think it's great. I love the way it fuses certain aspects of the different subclasses. I think it does that really, really well. The problem with it, of course, is that if you don't have Prismatic, you kind of feel like you've only got half the game. Do you know what I mean? And also, it does have a tendency to make the other subclasses feel a little bit redundant. Because I go, oh, let me do a Void build, and then I'll go, I'd rather do a Prismatic build. Because you've got Transcendence as well as your super, and as well as the mix and matching, and then particularly with the exotic class items, which really did help you, mix and matching from all of the exotic armors. So I thought Prismatic was great, but it did have, like I said, the fundamental problem of making the other subclasses seem to be a little bit irrelevant now. Whereas with Warframe, I don't think that's the case, because each Warframe is its own character, and I really do like that about it. I've only got 4 frames at the moment, but I've just kind of unlocked my first true non-starter Warframe in the Rhino frame, which I am enjoying. But what I want to do now is start farming for the other ones, you know? It's really, really interesting that way as well. And another thing that Warframe does, that Destiny doesn't do, is have a diversity in the types of activities that it has. Because Destiny, it's always first person, you're always running a mission from A to B, you kind of jump where you're going, you've got to avoid traps and all that kind of thing. With Warframe, you've got your standard missions where you're using all your groovy Warframe effects, which is great. But then you've got the Archwing stuff, which is kind of like Space Harrier, if any of you folks remember Space Harrier. I'm in space shooting things with a massive gun and diving with wings on. That's completely brilliant. I could go underwater with that. And then afterwards you've got the Railjack, which is basically a capital ship that you can use to shoot things. You've got space battles in it that you're controlling. You're wandering around the ship and then just jealously looking at Warframe 1999, but I will get there. You got motorbikes in it. It's just crazy. And Destiny, the only diversity in content they really had was Sparrow Racing, aside from the first person running around and shooting. Now, I know that's its game, it's a first person shooter, but I really think it would have been in Bungie's interests to create a personalized space that we could build and mod, like the Orbiter in Warframe. Just something like that, which would be great. An apartment somewhere, which you could make yours and have all your trophies around it. Do you know what I mean? Something like that, just something like that would have been great. How amazing would it be, though, to have space missions controlling your ship? Just something different to spice it up a little bit. They have never, ever tried anything that groundbreaking within the sphere of the game. And Warframe seems to be, well, thriving off that and bouncing from one thing to another to another to another. And I think that's led to a little bit of sameness in Destiny 2 and a little bit of staleness as well. Now, the final thing I want to talk about is monetization. How are these folks making their money to keep their games ongoing? Because let's face it, that's exactly what you need in order to make games, because it's an expensive business. Now, Warframe is basically free to play. You can play everything in it totally free. All the DLCs are free. The only thing you spend your money on are new Warframes and, well, resources and whatever you want, cosmetics and stuff like that. But you don't have to buy anything in order to play the game, which is great. However, they do make all of the stuff very desirable, and everything within the game is monetized. Because I had somebody saying, "What? You got to buy you can buy new intro music? That's disgusting." It's not really disgusting. It's just perhaps folks want to do that. You see, because there's a different culture. Because people love all the fact that the game is free and how much game that you get. People want to spend their money on the stuff to make their Warframes look cooler. And they want to spend the stuff on making things get built faster. This is the mechanic I dislike a lot, but you find this in a lot of things, like the First Descendant and practically every mobile game ever. You build a Warframe, and then it says, right, it's going to take 2 days now for it to build. And usually people go, I want to build it, play with it now. And then so you have to spend platinum in order to speed up the process. You can have it immediately. Now you can trade with other players to get platinum, but you can also buy it with real money. So that is one of the ways that they get you to spend cash, is to speed up the production process of a lovely, juicy new Warframe that you've just unlocked. But if you're patient, that 2 days will pass and then you'll have it there, so you don't really have to do it. It's not aggressively monetized in your face. Do you know what I mean? Now, Destiny 2 is a right mess when it comes to that, because I started playing it when it was all just, you know, you bought the DLCs, you bought everything. You had the Eververse there as well, which you could go and buy ornaments and stuff in, which is fine. I've never really done that. I think I bought one thing, or 2 or 3 things maybe for videos, but that's about it. I don't spend on armor sets, but it's your money, you know, you can do what you like. You can spend what you like there. I'm not criticizing people at all for doing it. Indeed, it's great for the game. But when Disney that was a slip, wasn't it? That was a psychological slip. When Destiny went supposedly free to play, I think things changed a lot for the worse in regard to how the people feel about having their money taken off them, because it's not free to play at all. You've got like a free demo-y bit where you can do a bits and bobs, or you can play the first part of a mission of a storyline, or a first part of the DLC to have a taste. It's basically an expanded demo mode, because you still have to buy the DLC. You still have to buy the seasons if you want to experience the full year's worth of content. So it's not free to play at all. It's got a pay-to-play model, but on top of that, you've got a very, very heavily in-your-face monetized Eververse, it seems. Now, you can, of course, completely ignore it, but just as an example, the other day, just completed the exotic mission. We did it 3 times, completed it. We thought, oh, there we are, that's great. The first thing that happened when I came back to Orbit was it went, look, buy this for your new exotic. It was just an advert, and I was like, oh, talk about taking you out of the game, innit? You know, oh, I hate that. It's terrible. Because I'm buying the game, I'm buying the DLCs. I don't know. I can understand them. They could do it differently. Do you know what I mean? They could just do it differently, and sometimes it just feels quite heavy-handed in Destiny. Warframe doesn't seem that much. I've never really had anything in my face unless I go to the market and go and have a little look, or hearing stuff from players around me. You know, oh, this is great, this is good. But you can also gift things to people. You can trade in between yourselves in Warframe. If you haven't got something, you can go and buy it from somebody else. That's fantastic. Destiny, if you had that in it where people could trade Ascendant Shards or Enhancement Prisms or whatever, the economy would completely collapse. It would be useless because nobody would be playing the games to get the stuff. They just want to get it from each other. So they can't do it like that. It's built not for that kind of economy to survive. So Warframe definitely does have a more of a community feel to it than Destiny 2 does within the game world itself. But of course, the main reason for this, of course, is kind of the splintering of the community, really. That's resulted in Destiny 2's lots of mistakes along the way, the content vaulting. Sunsetting, I never really wasn't too really worried about that. I was watching CB Grey the other day, and he said sunsetting actually began in Destiny 1 with a Taken King, and no one was worried about that because what the people seem to do is mix sunsetting up with content vaulting, and they're both completely different kinds of things. It's just kind of retiring weapons, you know, as opposed to sticking content in the vault and stopping people playing it. So anyway, I thought that was quite interesting. But then there's all the community dramas, there's the job losses, and there's one other thing that really hangs heavily over Destiny 2 players' heads, and that's Marathon. At the moment, they did have 1,600 employees, but now they've got about 860 employees at Bungie working on their games. Now, call me pessimistic, or what's the word? Deeply suspicious, but of those 860 people, I'd say there's about 150 people working on Destiny 2. That's what it feels like at the moment, because there's so many bugs in it that haven't been addressed. They are slowly addressing them, of course, but there's not much in the way of new content coming out, or just a change in how the game looks, you know? We're going to have to see what happens with Frontiers this year, with Behemoth and Apollo, but what can I say? I don't know what that's going to be like. It's got to be a big change. It's got to be a big change for it to work. But I think the rest of them are all working on Marathon, because this is what they're resting their hopes on and their financial hopes on for the company to go forward. And if Marathon doesn't work out, I think they're going to be in trouble. So they really should have been putting more effort into Destiny 2, because that's their rock, their foundation for the company to continue. But for whatever reason, that seemed to fall by the wayside. Whereas with Warframe, I've heard they've only got about 250 employees, and they look at that game. Look how big it is. Look how much new stuff they have. They do a great job of managing it and bringing out more stuff. Whereas I think Bungie is so splintered now that is having problems keeping Destiny 2 afloat. So if you look at the thumbnail that I've put up here, you can see it's the famous scene of Aldrin going to blow Cade away, and I put Warframe on Aldrin's face, and I put Destiny 2 on the face of our lovely Cade there. But what I actually think would have perhaps been a more truthful and realistic depiction for a thumbnail would be if it looked like this. There you go, folks. Thank you so much for watching and listening to my jabbering nonsense. I'm always eternally grateful for your ears and your eyes. Thanks so much. I look forward to speaking to you all again very soon. Sausage? Hurt.